I'm Jeremy Voigt. I teach English. I teach AP Language and AP Literature and Creative Writing and Honors 10. And I've been teaching here for 17 years, 16 years, something like that. And then my 20th year total teaching. Yeah.
And you took my job, you took my spot, right? Yeah. So I started teaching here I'm Jennifer Bradbury. I teach English and podcasting, right now Honors 10 and podcasting. And I've taught all the classes that you just listed too. And I taught them in this room because I started in 99 and then I quit when my daughter was 1 and I started staying home with my kids and writing full time. And that's when you took the job. And then now I'm back. So, yeah.
What made you want to start teaching?
Well, I started out as a journalism major in college, and then I was working with kids and tutoring kids, and and I was not a good English student in high school at all. Actually, when we read Jane Eyre, I got a C on the test because I read the book super fast and forgot what was the title of the book she threw at her cousin, kind of stuff. So I wasn't a super engaged student, but I loved journalism. But then I started working with students, volunteering and kind of doing some tutoring, and I worked at camps, and then I started doing all this stuff my English teachers in high school have been trying to get me to do, and I was like, oh, I like this. And so that's how I ended up teaching.
I graduated with an English degree and needed a job. So I started substitute teaching, and because my wife at the time was teaching, and so found out I could sub with an emergency certificate, kind of liked it, went back and got my certificate, and have been teaching ever since.
I mean, the book that I just had come out this summer, if you really go back and do the math, when I first started trying to write that book, without realizing it was the book that it's going to be now, it's a whole thing. But it's I first wrote a first draft of that book in 2008, I think. So probably earlier, actually. Anyway, so that's almost 17 years or something, right? But from the time that I started working on this draft to the time that the book came out, it was probably about 4 years. And that's off and on. That's me finishing other projects too and other stuff coming out in the meantime. But there's a whole lot of back and forth with revision and rewriting and figuring it out. Yeah.
Yes, actually a similar time frame. I've got 2 what are called chapbooks out, which are small little books of poems, and then a full-length collection coming out. The full-length collection, I originally wrote the draft in 2006. I finished it as part of my graduate thesis. And then I've been revising it for 17 years and sending it out. To get a book of poems published, you don't get a lot of back and forth with editors because they don't care to read it, I don't think, or to take the time. It's just not part of the process. So you send it competitions. And so, when you send something out a couple of times to competitions and it gets rejected, then you kind of relook at it and you take poems out, revise poems that are existing and put new ones in, and then send it out and get another round of rejections. And so I sent it out to, I think on average, 10 to 15 contests and presses a year for those 17 years, and got rejected over and over again. In the meanwhile, sending out individual poems to magazines, and getting some acceptances and a lot of rejections. And so it's just that happened on. And then I have a lot of poet friends who would read it and give feedback, and there's some help there. And then, it's that kind of a constant ongoing process of just trying to refine it. But it took, for that book, the full-length book that's coming out took 17 years. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, do you have any advice for anyone interested in writing?
Get a day job.
Yeah, become a teacher. In terms of writing, you should read as much as you possibly can. I can't emphasize that enough, right? If you want to engage with an art form at any level, you have to know what's out there, and you have to see what other people do, and respond to it and join the conversation. Writing is really joining a huge historical conversation and contemporary conversation. If you don't know what anybody else is doing, then you're probably doing something that's already been done and not doing it as interestingly, right? You have to do that comparison, and find out what you like and what you don't like, and go from there.
Yeah, and I think looking at all the kinds of writing that you have to do as connected to your goals as a writer, because I didn't plan to write fiction ever in my life. It wasn't until I was teaching and I was reading all this great YA lit that I was like, I wonder if I could do it. And it'd be fun to try it, right? But I always loved writing. In high school I did for my journalism class. And then in college, I really loved the kind of writing that I started doing with analysis and writing papers and everything else, which sounds weird, but I did. Yeah, but I think understanding that every bit of writing you do, whether or not it's like if you want to be a poet, every other bit of writing you do is training for that muscle as a writer also, I guess. And just treating it like practice and connection.
All right, a quick question. Could you give a brief description of the themes in your newest book?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, so I have a chapbook that just came out that is out, and the themes in that one are really clear because that book exists because over those 17 years I've been working on lots of poems, and I write a lot because I need the practice, and so I write a lot of things that don't become anything. But I just looked down and I realized I had all these poems that dealt with themes of teaching and gun violence and where those things sort of intersected. And so I put together a small chapbook and sent it to a press, and it ended up getting picked up. So that book deals with that. The book that's coming out later, that's the full collection, has a lot broader. It's not as focused, right? All of those poems kind of focus on the same theme, where this it's broader. It deals with family, the environment, and loss, and my children, and so there's a lot more variation in that one.
All right. So this is from Miss Bradbury. Could you describe the difference in the creative process between writing YA novels and children's books, bare minimum?
It's not. The process for me is really similar. Because you're still trying to figure out what the right story is to tell, even if it's nonfiction. And my picture books have been, one of them's nonfiction also, and I've written other ones too that haven't been published, but you're still trying to figure out the right parts of the story to kind of frame in, right? And then it's just a longer process of drafting on a novel. It just takes, and I usually draft pretty fast on a first draft just so I can outrun that voice that says it sucks, right? And then I know it can suck, but then I can fix it, but I can't fix it if it doesn't exist. So it's kind of the same process, but just sort of collapsed, I guess, if it's a picture book or something shorter. And then the process of publishing that is way different because then you have all this space that you're working with the editor to kind of figure out, okay, well, the art is going to take care of this part, so you cut that out, right? And then you get the art and you have to, end up writing, because the art's really good and art tells the story differently, so you end up changing the text. So that part's different in the revision, but it's fun.
Favorite word?
No. How about what's the word that you have to revise out because it shows up repeatedly?
You would never, I bet you can't guess.
I can't guess. Oh, terrific? No. That's terrific. Fascinating.
Fascinating is the word I'm trying to revise out of my speech pattern, because that's been pointed out to me that I use that a lot, which was my upgrade from interesting, which I was given grief on before. In my poems, it's light. The word light.
Oh.
I use that word too much. Because there's those word cloud things. I've used those where I've thrown a whole manuscript in it because it shows
and it
you.
Pops up all the time.
Yeah, light was always, which surprised me because the poems are kind of dark. So nobody would have accused me of leaning on the word light, but I like words too much to have a favorite. I mean, that's an even harder question than what's your favorite book, or because it's sort of like
do you want to answer that one instead?
What's the next word I'm gonna?
Your favorite book?
Oh, God.
Or your favorite child?
Favorite child?
Same thing.
That one's easy.
Maybe you're his favorite student, so choose that one.
Do you have a favorite book?
No. Jane Eyre, probably. That's the
Yeah.
one I go to.
Fair child there.
No. They're both my favorite and least favorite simultaneously.
That tracks. God, I stepped in it because I offered that. I mean,
Yeah,
right now
you
I've
did.
been spending a lot of time with the collected poems of Gerard Manley Hopkins, and they are endlessly interesting to me. So I would just say that.
Right on.
I don't have a favorite word, I don't think, but I do have the word that every time I get a manuscript back from my editor, she's always writing notes in the margin like, they're turning again. Like, I have this weird habit of like making my characters, he turned, and trying to use that instead of dialogue. Instead of saying said, he turned. I don't know. I've been doing it for years, so yeah, that's all I got.
It's nice you have an
Of what they did, right? Anyway, okay, sorry.
Okay.
What?
What's your favorite word and why? Or what's your favorite word right now?
That you can say on the morning show.